How hard did you push it? Till I black out? Yes. Numerous times, yes.
What's happening, Municipals? This is your boy Big C. We got Ashton on the pod as well this week. We are doing a old school course review. We actually, we haven't done a course review together for a while, but for certain circumstances, we will talk a little bit at the end of the pod about. We were brought to the Sacramento area and got a couple solid rounds in, or I don't know if they'd be called solid, but we definitely sweated our asses off. It was hot as the devil's butthole out there. It was
you were struggling. I mean, it wasn't just you. I mean, it was like, I guess for context, we're not going to talk about Whitney Oaks here. Big and our buddy Bean, they flew in. Actually, Nick did too. We played Whitney Oaks on Friday, and I think it was like 107 when we teed off. We were obviously in carts, and I think we made the turn. And like, again, I've been on record, like I like walking. I'm from the South. By the time we got to 10, it was a tough scene. I mean, that golf course, again, we're not going to talk too much about it. It makes sense why you are a straighter hitter of the golf ball, because that place is tight. That place is penal. And I think when you combine kind of tight penal golf course with 106 degrees, we were cooked after 9 holes. And y'all had traveled, but like, holy cow, it was like as hot as it's probably as hot as it's ever been. I mean, I played in place with higher humidity, but unbelievably hot in Sacramento. Holy shit.
It was crazy. And I mean, we also had a nightmare of an experience trying to get a rental car. Flew into Sacramento.
What's the deal with that? I feel like rental cars, I feel like that's a common theme these days.
Well, they had 3 different rental car companies being ran by 2 associates. And so
That's great.
all of these flights are coming in, and like, Avis, Budget, and the rental car company we rented from, they're some of the more popular companies, and they had only 2 people running both or all 3 counters, and it was just a disaster. There's way too many people. It took us like an hour and a half to get the car. We had to like push the tee time multiple times. It was got there 5 minutes before tee off. I mean, it was a kind of a shit show.
I literally handed you a hot dog, and it makes me sad that I know that you want to catch up and relish. I put that on there for you, and we boogied to the tee, and it's on Whitney Oaks, where it's like, you've got 15 yards, make the most of it.
Yeah, it's a tight piece of property. I mean, it's a fun course. There's some good parts about it, but again, if you don't hit it straight, you're going to lose a lot of golf balls, because it is track home, but it doesn't feel extraordinarily track home because of all the rock outcroppings and stuff that are, that the course is built around. So it kind of hides.
Track home? What do you mean?
So track homes, like it's like cookie cutter houses. They're made by one developer. It's like multiple million houses, and then a golf course slapped in the middle of it. It doesn't feel like most track home golf feels, where you just got fences on both sides. The way it's laid out is much better, but it's within a community. Whitney Oaks, solid, fun track. We only got 15 holes in, and then we were just like, we're done.
And in fairness to them, I think it's 40. It was like $42 with a cart. And I also know through a couple people in the No Laying Up chat that I'm a part of. Like, I mean, I think the one thing I will say is, even though that is a golf course I would not want to play every day, it does serve a great purpose. Like, I think there's a guy who says he lives right around the corner, and he was like, I forgot what he said, but like, basically it's like twilight rounds are like less than $10 and he gets a free bucket. Like, he's just like, it's such a good deal that I end up spending a bunch of time there, even though like I don't love the golf course. So I will say, like, kudos to them, because like, we want golf courses we love, but I think the fact that they are offering a very affordable deal. Looks seem like a pretty solid practice facility. Definitely some proper holes. I mean, some holes that I never ever want to see again. But for what it is, I mean, I think that I'm glad it exists. But definitely kind of some goofy golf. Like, I think at the last hole we played is like a dog leg where I hit, I think it's like 5-iron wedge. My 5-iron got stuck in like, it looked like it was at a Jurassic Park with like, we're like, I'm not going in there. It's 106 degrees. There's rattlesnakes. It's just like, get me out of here. Like, thank you for the 16 holes, very affordable price, but let's go have some dinner and go tackle the ridge tomorrow.
Yep. So we had some gracious hosts that night. Two of my best friends, Mike and Mary Tess, and then his brother Dave, who we actually interviewed on the pod here. He is the superintendent for Arbuckle Golf Course, and so yeah, that if you haven't listened to that episode, it's really fun to listen to. Dave's a good guy. They also got to meet one of my best friends, Jay. All three buddies that are not golfers, but amazing people. And I've known those guys since high school, so they were gracious enough to lend us their home for the weekend while we were out there for an event. And so before we went to the event that we were there for, we got out and played the Ridge out in Auburn, California. And the Ridge is an RTJ design. I think one thing that threw a lot of people off were the very, very obscure and random gold and bronze statues all over the place. They have like John Wayne, and like none of them make sense. Like
some
none
Native
of them
American leader, who, to be clear, is not a. It would actually be incredibly thoughtful and progressive to have a Native American leader from the area that you're probably occupying. No, I don't think that. I looked it up. I forgot where. The person is not affiliated with the area in any way, shape, or form. So it's like, and you're getting like a hot dog, and you're like, why is John Wayne right? Like what is there is no connection. Like, did you ever ask as a kid, Chris? Like, have they ever given you context into why?
I don't think I ever put too much thought into it. I was like, oh,
there's
they've
John
got all
Wayne.
these statues of famous people all over the place. Like, cool, whatever. Like, I never put any thought into it. And then, like, the first thing that, like, you and Bean and Hussey said when we were walking up to check in, you guys were like, what the, like, why is there a Jack Nicklaus statue here built by Robert Trent Jones? Like, this doesn't coincide. Like, why would they put all these random? I think they had one of like a bald eagle on one side. Like, I think they have like a leopard or a cheetah one. Like, it literally, they're just everywhere. They're all over the clubhouse and like outside, put in different places. And
yeah, I mean, the only thing I'll say, and this might get me in trouble with some of our listeners, and I don't mean it this way, but my first thought was that the statues felt sort of like a 1996 Republican's wet dream. It's like if you were to think about like a George Bush, I know that's not 1996, but if you were to think like a George Bush era Republican, it's like, hell yeah, John Wayne, a cheetah, a Native American who was, got slaughtered, but like we're here, like persevered. It's like, again, I'm gonna back way the fuck away from that, but like that's kind of I was like, you could see this in some like, coming from the South, like you could see these statues in like the, some estate in like, Mobile, Alabama. It's kind of how it felt, but you're in the foothills of Tahoe. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's interesting walking up, but friendly staff, good little bar and grill that they've got there. I think they have a really solid practice facility as well. It's just a well done piece of property, and I'm not the biggest RTJ fan. I mean, there's some courses I love. I think Junior is a little bit better. I think Reese is a little bit better. Not really thinking, not a huge fan of the Father. But like, it's an RTJ design, so you know what you're getting into. It's going to be hard. That's the one thing you can always expect with the Robert Trent Jones course is like the greens are going to be hard to get on, and there's going to be a lot of land movement that's going to get the ball to run into places that you didn't expect landing in good spots. And that's what we get at the Ridge. You'll land it smack dab in the middle of the fairway, and then you're hunting for it in this rocky sand tree area.
Yeah, it's kind of funny you mentioned the hard piece because I forget exactly. I think Hussey and I had played Spanish Bay before, but he was in the group ahead of me. I think Hussey played pretty well. I did not, but afterwards we were having beers, and I was like, can we just like mutually make an agreement to just like take a fucking break from Robert Trent Jones? Like, I just can't do the again, it's fine once in a while, but the hit it here or else you die over and over and over and over again. I mean, the one thing I will say that like I've played enough, between playing the Robert Trent Jones Trail, which we'll do eventually. I mean, I actually think like the Judge is like one of the most probably it's hard, like all things are, but like that's just a cool golf course. Like I told you, it's like for the people who know, like we'll eventually go there, but Robert Trent Jones Trail, you basically you get a cart and play all the golf you possibly can for under $100. Like that's really hard to beat. And the Judge is like one of the coolest, hard, but one of the coolest golf courses I've ever played. But I will say, I do think sometimes, like when you go to like a restaurant or something and you're like, what is this person's style? And it almost feels like contrived or they're making it up on the fly. The more Robert Trent Jones I play, especially in such a quick sequence, it's like the dude may have a template, but you definitely know you're playing a Robert Trent Jones course. Like it's obvious to you that you're playing it. And I give him kudos for that, but man, playing that every day would just get exhausting.
Yeah, it's a fun course to play occasionally, but it's not one of my favorite places to play. I know we all gripe about, a lot of things about Dark Horse, but the actual layout and design of that course, I would play that a million times over the Ridge all day, every day.
The only gripe is the pace of play. If they had a marshal and enforced it, I would want to play Dark Horse several times a year. Yeah. I do want to get back. I just want to be the first group off. But Dark Horse, I'm with you. I mean, I don't. The holes aren't super clear to me anymore. But from what I remember, it's just as long as it's not a 6.5 hour round, which it's going to be unless you're the first group off. Totally would prefer Dark Horse.
Yeah, for being in the same area within 5-10 miles from each other, I think Dark Horse is a better design. But we are talking the Ridge today, so let's kind of get into kind of the review here. So the Ridge for me, it's a very similar RTJ opening hole that you're going to see a lot of places. One thing to describe kind of, the type of art, the type of landscape and things like that, it's kind of like if you were playing desert golf in the mountains. So you get the trees, but underneath the trees, there's no foliage. It is dirt and pebble rocks and it's crap. And I ruined 3 golf clubs hitting out of that crap when we were playing at the Ridge. Destroyed the soles of 3 of my golf clubs. Again, I hit the bad shots and then I put myself in those positions. But, not my favorite. I prefer a little bit more, Parkland or Link style. Just my kind of take. That's one thing we hated about playing out in Vegas was, we basically just didn't. Thing is, you spend a lot of money on your golf clubs. You don't want to destroy them, and we're not playing for money. So, those type of shots, it sucks. I like to play it as it lies, but I'm also not going to put a massive chip, which I did in my attack wedge. Took a gigantic chip right out of the toe, and I had to grind it out. It's just those kind of things. It's is this shot worth hitting? And ruining a $200, $300 golf club? No. So one of my only gripes there, it's not my favorite type of landscape. I've played plenty of mountain or like Tahoe style golf, and they get the grass to grow all the way through the trees, things like that. I prefer that. The Ridge is not that way. It's definitely, you could see with the heat wave, and they did get a lot of water over the winter. California definitely got drenched a little bit this winter, but they had it running and dried out. I mean, it was crispy out there. I think the first 3 holes was a little, they watered early and it was kind of, dissipating, but I think by like the 5th hole, it was running.
Yeah, well, it's interesting you say that because I feel like I think we had a different experience because like we were actually so confused how it was not 106 yet, but it was already really hot. Like I remember that number 9. So I mean, some holes that we'll talk about some specific holes. 2 and 9 are par fives that are like carbon copies of each other. Well, I guess they're mirrors of each other. So like they're long par fives. On 2, the water's right. On 9, the water's left. And I had a ball when I laid up short. I just had a ball plug. But in fairness to them, I think what they did is it's so hot that if they don't soak, I guess, if they don't soak them early, the whole place might die. Because when it's 106 degrees, I mean, that's always what it was for me in the South. Like, you would play, it'd be so hot that the greens would be wet because they would have to, the greens, if it's too hot. So I don't know if you were before me or after me, but I feel like there were some holes that, to your point, it was running. And there were some holes that were like super swampy. But I guess in fairness to them, when it's 106 degrees, you just got to make sure the course isn't going to die.
Yeah, it probably was more in those like catch basin areas that had shade, where you probably
Yeah,
balls would also run that way, but that's kind of where the water kind of
it's
collects.
going.
I'm sure because they overwatered. I mean, if you were landing by halfway through 18, by the time if you were landing smack dab in the middle of the fairway, they were bouncing and running.
Yeah.
But you're kind of right there. There were certain areas that were a little bit more wet and dense out there. But course design overall, I think the greens are really fun to play. I think
Greens are
the
really good.
greens are really good. I think there's a lot of shitty approach shots out there. That's RTJ for you. A lot of
Hit it
like
here.
unnecessary, difficult approach shots from a really good, off the tee shot. It's just, where he'll have bunker, front left, water basically surrounding the whole back and right side. And you're like, cool, really? You're going to make it like bean shaped, like towards me. So I have like a 10 foot, 10-yard window to be able to hit it into. It's like, approaches were a little bit difficult, hard to find out there. I found myself in a lot of up and down situations.
Yeah.
Didn't really get a lot of action on the green out there from approach shots, but I think it's fairly fair, off the tee. I don't think I found a lot of issues off the tee out there. Most of the places, it's just you have to pick your spot, and you have to know the course. If you hit it into the right side of the fairway, you're boned. You hit it left, you're in perfect approach position. And it's just those kind of things. I haven't played it in a long time. It was the first time you've played it. So
Yeah.
those kind of intricate things I forgot, and you guys were learning for the first time. So you get yourself into, particular situations that make it difficult to score low out there if you're not hitting in
Yeah.
the right specific
Well,
spots.
well, it's funny because I mean, and I think that what you just said, I think, is ultimately probably the issue with RTJ is when you think about a course. We just did our last week. We did our kind of dream course, and a lot of what you and I kind of both talked about is courses that are forgiving off the tee, but they're forgiving with the context that, with the context that you can hit it anywhere, but there's definitely a better anywhere. You can hit it a lot of places, but there's definitely a preferred place to be. The hard part with RTJ is I would say that a lot of, even though I'm with you that I didn't find this course like incredibly penal off the tee, I definitely thought that there was probably, you know, the fairways probably could have been 25 to 50%. They could have just been bigger. But the crazy thing that I especially felt here, and now that with reflection, I definitely feel about Spanish Bay too, is they have the same premise of width and angles where it's like, hey, this side is better than this side, but then they're not that forgiving, right? So it's like, and that's kind of I think bad golf course architecture, right? Because it's like, cool, left side is better than right, but it's not like they make it like it's the same difficulty, right? It's just like it's hard to hit it. It's better to be on the left, but it's hard to hit it no matter what, right? Like the hole that I think about is number 10 at Spanish Bay. It's this like we talked a little bit about it, but it's this like pretty aggressive dogleg par five where it's like, our friend Paul, his wife Elizabeth's dad is out there. And he's a marshal, and he's like, okay, you want to hit it way farther right than you think, but then when you actually do that, you kind of if you hit it too far to the right, you're in the trees. You don't have an angle. But then I went too far to the left. I don't know. It's like in order for you to actually attack on a par five, you need to hit it into like a 12-yard window. And like that's just really hard to ask, right? So it's like right isn't good, left isn't good. It's like, wow, RTJ, that's really cool of you. Like the place you have to hit, it's like a 12-yard window. It's like, are you good enough to do that? Like I told you, it's like Hussey kept saying, like, maybe we're not good enough. But he's not building this for like, his ideal clientele is like, I would love to see LPGA players go play like a tough RTJ design. That's who this is for, right? It's like, cool. I don't care how small you make the fairways. Like we can hit 90% of the fairways. We suck at golf. The men disperse it, too much dispersion. But the fact that it's not for giving off the tee, but then they also are giving you an advantage that's kind of arbitrary. That's where it kind of stops making sense to me,
Yeah, it becomes target golf. I like creativity in my golf courses. That's the easiest way to say it. And I think like, there's ways to be able to have kind of more of an open landscape or have, things that allow you to be, more open-minded off the tee and take different clubs, but still create difficulties depending on where the pin is placed that day. Like I like the difficulty to change every time I'm at a golf course where, if I hit on the left, I'm going to have a perfect approach into the green if the pin is front or mid. If the pin is, mid back or all the way in the back, you kind of want to be on the right-hand side because you don't want to, have an approach over a trap or something like that. And the creativity in being able to do that, where I think RTJ, where he designs his greens, it's like, nope, doesn't matter where the pin is. This is where you're going to hit it. This is where you need to land it. This is going to give you the best advantage to come in. And it's just like, if you play my course exactly how I design it, you're going to score low. Where it's like, hey, I want guys of all different abilities, or just different ways of playing the game to be able to hit it in different places and find their own path to a good score. So it's just it's one of those things. I just don't want to be told exactly how I need to play every single hole. And that's what I feel like RTJ does.
Totally. I mean, I started off birdie eagle and then I think proceeded to shoot 85. But part of the reason why, the best example of what you're saying is number 2. Shout out to you. This is a quick, it's not about this, but like, you fit me into my new driver. Also, I played golf today, Chris. JD can attest to it. The best I've ever hit my driver ever. So shout out to you for the new stealth setup you'd have me in. But I will say number 2 is probably the best drive I've ever hit. It was like the Rory, like booming draw. Like, cause again, there's water over on the right side. I started it kind of left over the trees and hit this like high draw. I think I had like 210 in, just hammered a hybrid right in the middle of the green to 15 feet, made the putt for eagle. And I had that moment of like, cool, I'm a 3 handicap, but like this sequence of outcomes for me is very low, right? Hammer, just absolutely smash a drive like over 300 yards, hit a hybrid, again, a hybrid where there's, a bunker left that's very penal, there's water right, the green is very complicated. Hit it into onto the green at all is amazing. But then to hit it to 15 feet and make the putt, yeah, like I might have been the only person over the month that did that, right? Because like, great, but that's like a top 5 percentile of outcomes for me, and we know that's not how golf works. So like a really cool hole when I did that, like it felt really satisfying to do that. But the fact that I went out and like shot 85 tells you that like I proceeded to not do that on a lot of the holes coming in, right?
Yeah, and I think the back nine is a little bit more challenging. There's a lot more
Yeah.
elevated greens. There's a lot more water that comes into play, I think, on the back nine. Um, you know, I think 18 is kind of a meh finishing hole. It's got kind of a lake running along the left hand side of it. You have to keep it right. If you keep it right, it'll kind of run through the cart path into this crap over on the right towards the clubhouse. The green doesn't leave you any room to kind of hit it long. You'll just basically be in the parking lot almost if you hit it long, or in the street. It just not a great hole. I did think I would say like probably my favorite hole out there was, I think I'm kind of with you. Like I think number 10. I think number 10 is a pretty good hole. I think it's challenging enough to the point where it gives you. It's probably one of the only holes that gives you a couple different looks. Like you can actually have a little bit more width within the fairway to still have good looks into your approach. Into your approach shots. So I think that's one of the holes that I like the most just because of its flexibility, where I think most of the holes were, again, more of that. Hit it in this spot, you'll have a good approach, you'll score low.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that one thing I'm trying to think about is I know we're doing these kind of course reviews a little less, but I'm trying to think more about cohorts of holes. And what I mean by that is I feel like just now that I'm thinking about this more, trying to really understand of like, do the par threes stand out? Do the par fives stand out? Or like, are there, obviously there's a lot more options, but like, or are there like especially great number of par fours? And I think that like, I thought the par threes are probably the best component of the ridge. Like I thought 17 was a great hole. You have to hit from the tees we were playing. We weren't playing it all the way back, but I think you have to hit a proper mid to long iron. Very RTJ in the sense of there's bunkers kind of long and left. There's water short and right. But it's a hole that's asking you a specific question. But I appreciate it from a flexibility standpoint. I mean, short left is okay, and you can kind of get it up and down if you need to. But I think that the par threes really, I mean, they weren't like incredible, but I thought the par threes really stood out, which is just interesting because I think that like again overall, like I did not really like Spanish Bay, but I thought the par threes at Spanish Bay were pretty exceptional. I think that like 16 is probably in the top 5 best holes I've played this year at Spanish Bay. And I think number 4 at Spanish Bay is also up there. That's an amazing green. So the more I'm thinking about it, the more it's like, when I think back to like the the RTJ trail, like the Judge, I mean, I think God, it's been a while. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the Judge on the front 9. There's like a legit like island green, and that it's probably like a 5 iron. And so the more I'm thinking about it, it's like, is RTJ my kind of architect? No, but I think he makes some good par threes. But if you think about it, that makes sense, right? Because he's asking for target golf, and what kind of makes sense? A par three, right? It's like, here's the tee box, here's the green, hit it here, right? So I think it makes sense that par threes are better for him, right? Or is that
so the one thing we did a normal Municipals fuck up. It is RTJ Jr. that designed this course. Funny thing is, you know what? We probably confuse that because this is not what I normally see from RTJ Jr. Like, it's not a particular one like his. It's more like his father, which makes sense because this was one of the first courses he kind of did on his own after he kind of broke away from doing a lot of joint projects with his father. So I think he was trying to get his bearings on these first couple courses that he designed. But again, this is probably on the worst courses, Robert Trent Jones Jr. courses I've probably played, because we're talking Carica and a lot of other courses out there that are much more appealing to play on a regular basis.
Isn't Carica Reese Jones?
I
think Carica's Reese Jones.
We're batting 1,000 today.
Well, no, it's I was about to call it incestuous. I guess it's just family, but no, it's complicated. I think because also too, to your point, is I think that it's like it makes sense that this would be similar to his dad while he's still kind of close to his dad, and it's going to get farther away. And at the point when Reese Jones, obviously, I don't have to look it up. It was definitely Reese Jones and Carica. It's totally different than he's pretty far away, kind of off on his own after doing some bad golf courses as well. Shout out to Torrey South.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely more resembling of his dad than some of the work that I've played of his as of recent. But there's a reason RTJ was always called the U.S. Open Killer, or U.S. Open Doctor is what he should have been called. The U.S. Open.
The Open Killer. Damn.
He should have been. I mean, now look what they're doing. They're sending Gil Hance around to redesign all of his courses because nobody liked them.
He doctored death. I think that's what it is.
Yes.
Well, you know what it is, Chris? They call it the doctor because he was doctoring the course, but to doctor a score.
No, what was
that's kind of how we feel, right?
Kevorkian. He's Dr. Kevorkian, the guy that used to give everybody the lethal injections. That's who RTJ is. He's Dr. Kevorkian of architects.
I need to fact check. Is that true? No, I'm just not even sure.
Dr. Kevorkian. This is where my 5 or 6 years older than you comes into play. This was
I've heard that name, but I have no
early mid '90s. Dr. Kevorkian up in the Midwest was giving people lethal injections, and he actually ended up getting arrested and tried for murder. And that's what RTJ should do for some of his designs.
I'm looking up Dr. Kevorkian. I believe you, but I'm also just it's a name that I've heard.
Yeah.
Let's see. Murad Jacob Jack Kevorkian died in 2011. Was an Armenian-American pathologist and euthanasia proponent. He publicly championed a terminal patient's right to die by physical-assisted suicide and embodied the quote, "Dying is not a crime." Kevorkian said that he assisted at least 130 patients to that end. He was convicted of murder in 1999 and was often portrayed in the media by the name of Dr. Death. In 1998, Kevorkian was arrested and tried for his role in voluntary euthanasia of a man, Thomas Uke, who had Lou Gehrig's disease, or ALS. He was convicted of second-degree murder and served 8 years. He was released on parole in 2007 on the condition he would not offer advice about, participate in, or be present at the act of any type of euthanasia in any other person, nor that he would promote or talk about the procedure of assisted suicide. So not, I think you said not lethal injection, but I guess lethal injection.
It's suicide. Yeah. Same situation, but he was basically the first person in America that was helping people along with it. Now it's legal in certain states, things like that. But
I was going to say,
I think my relation to RTJ, Dr. Death.
I think Dr. Kevorkian is actually pretty progressive. Reading that, I'm I don't know. If certain things happen to me, it's I might just put on, the 2019 Masters and just kind of fade away. I think that's
you better move to the state of Washington.
I don't think that's in the card. So maybe Dr. Death will not be. I'll have to come to Dr. Death, and Dr. Death won't come to me. So Oh God, this was like
kind
totally off the rails.
Kind of a weird segue, I guess, since unfortunately that's what we were just talking about. One of our very 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 close friends, you know, it's a little hard for me. So really close friend, Pat Cabrera. He was one of our buddies that we met through the Random Golf Club group chat back in through the pandemic, or even a little bit before that. Has come to almost every event. Has come to every event that we have ever held. First person, one of the first persons on our speed dial that we would contact whenever we had a golf trip, or we had, he was on the trip with Ashton to Bandon.
He literally replaced Jack. Like when Jack couldn't come because of life circumstances, Pat replaced Jack on our Bandon trip in March.
Yep. So just right after that, and right after our tournament, the cookout down in Soul Park, Pat was involved in an accident off of Highway 1 that ended up unfortunately taking his life. So that was the reason that we were in Sacramento. We were there for Pat's celebration of life, and it was an absolutely incredible turnout. I think we had 12 guys from our group chat that drove.
I think 14.
Yeah, 14. Nick flew up from San Diego. Me and Bean flew down from Portland. Bunch of the guys from the Bay Area and kind of all over.
Yeah.
Traveled to really be there for him and kind of show support to his family. And they definitely appreciated it. I think it all hit our hearts when we walked in, and the picture on the table for everybody to see was the group picture of our first outing at Soul Park for the cookout. So, they really appreciated it. One really cool thing, one of his really close family friends was out in Bandon a couple weeks prior to the celebration of life, and he had a great idea to hit up Ashton and ask Ashton what his favorite course was to play. And it was Trails, actually the same flag that's behind Ashton right now. So he picked up a flag for us. We all signed it and gave it to his family, kind of just to hold on to as a memento. So, it was a rough, thing, but it was really cool to see all of us get together and do an activity that Pat really loved, in support of him at a course that he worked at when he was in high school. So it all kind of tied together, and, it was really beautiful to kind of get everybody together, where we usually only get to see all of that group all together once, maybe twice a year, because of, our events that we're throwing. But yeah, it was really amazing to kind of see there. And what were your kind of thoughts on that, Ashton?
Yeah, I have a couple. And also, too, just quickly, I'm thinking back. I hope nobody thinks that transition from Dr. Kevorkian to Pat was like, that was not intentional to be
no tie-in
or funny.
Not
like that was, like, I hope that didn't come across a way that it didn't mean to. I think a few things. I think before I got to talk about Pat, I talk about all the time in my personal life and on here. I think the unofficial tagline of this podcast is, it's about the golf, but it's not about the golf, right? And I think, to me, to get a bunch of knuckleheads down to Soul Park, like, we appreciate everybody coming, but shouldn't be that hard, right? We give you 8 months of notice. The trip is super affordable. Golf course sells itself. Good food. Like, we're offering you a great service at a very fair price, right? But to see 14 people come, and this isn't meant to like toot people's horns, but I mean, just to be honest with people, I mean, the service, the Remembrance of Life was in Colfax, California, which, I mean, it's so far away. I mean, it's so far away from, especially for me, like for those of us in San Francisco, or for Marcus, come from Pacifica. It's just a long way, a lot of traffic, a massive day. And I think for people to prioritize coming was really special. I think when I was kind of hitting balls and I was watching people roll up, and just to watch people not say a word and just kind of come up and hug each other, just the camaraderie that was felt was really, really special. And I mean, I think that I think that there's a lot of things that I'm thankful for about this podcast. I mean, I think that the whole idea for this was always to just make it where you and I, who have these conversations usually when you're driving home from work, to memorialize these and just have these like we're doing right now. But to see the sense of community amongst our group, to see how much we genuinely care for each other. You guys flying down from Portland, Nick flying up from San Diego, basically everybody, no matter where you live, driving 2+ hours each way in traffic in 106 degrees. It was really, really special. And also too, I mean, I want to give a shout out to the group. Like, everyone was asking how they could help, and our group of guys, and this is including people who weren't there, but I mean, we raised $900 for Pat's family. I don't think any of us know Pat's family, but we can't even imagine kind of the tough situation that they're in. We got to meet his family. We got to hang out with Sloan, his wonderful sister. And just the fact that the fact that people were willing and able to donate, the fact that we were able to give them a meaningful sum of money was really special, because it's not about the money, but I think the hardest part about grieving is that there are costs in this situation, right? It's not just like the emotional toll. It's the fact that you actually have to spend money as you're kind of grieving. And we just hope that our small part of this was able to help. So I think the biggest thing I felt is gratitude for our group. Didn't know Pat for long, but gratitude that I had come across such a wonderful person. It's just really hard. I mean, I think, I think that we'll talk about some of our favorite memories, but I mean, I have a picture that I'm going to frame of after, we had such shitty weather to start off our Bandon trip. And I think that, that first day, the afternoon round, when the sun finally broke through at Old Mac, and, there's a picture, it's like 17 green at Old Mac, kind of, where you got the ghost tree behind us, and it's me and Dash and JD and Pat, and that memory and those rounds and that picture are just things that I'm never going to forget. So, and I guess the last thing to say is, and this is a huge shout out to his family, I think that it's really hard to strike a balance between the sadness and the joy, right? And I don't think that nobody can do it wrong, because it's really, really hard. But one thing that I felt was incredible is, many of you didn't know Pat, but Pat had such a big heart and such a joy. We kind of called him like the meme lord. I mean, the dude was just like constantly making he had such a ability to make everybody laugh, but to do so in a way that felt inclusive. Even if he was roasting you, it somehow felt inclusive. And so the fact that, for his Remembrance of Life, it really was joyous. There was sadness, obviously, but even down to they had shirts made, Pat, there's all these inside jokes where the birds aren't real, or raccoons, or Smirnoff Ice, all this stuff that candidly, I don't know Pat. I don't know Pat well enough to even understand half the jokes on the t-shirt. I know some of them. But the fact that it was such a joyous occasion, the fact there was laughter, is a tremendous kudos to Pat. And then I think it's a tremendous kudos to his family for putting on an event that felt so authentic to who he is. Because if that had been super sad and morbid, it would have been totally understandable for what happened. But the Remembrance of Life very much struck the tone and tenor of the person who he was. And that felt really, really amazing. So I know that's a lot of words, but I mean, over just a short amount of time, Pat really, really touched so many people and really touched us. And I love him dearly and I miss him very much. And I just feel very, very glad that my path um, overlapped with Pat Cabrera for, too short of a time, but he brought me a lot of joy and a lot of laughs.
I mean, absolutely. That's exactly how I feel about Pat, and I feel a very tight bond with him in a very short time. Um, and so, because of that, one of his nicknames was Chips. And so, with that, we are next year going to be renaming the cookout Chips Cookout. And so next year, I have plans on doing some really, really cool stuff with that for the merch, and to kind of, again, remember Pat within the first year that we kind of change that name so that everybody has something to keep with them, and to remember Pat whenever they step on the golf course. And we're gonna do a ceremonial shot before anybody tees off, and we're gonna write Pat's name on a golf ball and hit it out into the course and let him hang out with us for the tournament every year. So little things like that, just to remember a guy that not only supported the Municipals but was just a dear close friend of ours. Before we started doing any of this, we were friends with Pat, and he was always the first one to be excited to hop in a car and join us anywhere for a round. I mean, he was always first one to say yes, and if he could make it happen, even if it was driving 4 hours back and forth because he had to be at work at 7:30 in the morning, like, that was Pat. So, I can't say much more about him. What you said is exactly how I feel, and we miss you, Pat. But you're always going to be remembered, especially every year when the cookout comes around.
Yeah. And just for a little bit of context, I think this is obvious, but just because I think sometimes it's important to be very clear. Um, you know, this has been weighing on us for a while, and we just wanted to, out of respect for his family, we wanted to wait until after the remembrance of life before we talked about this. Um, and candidly, I think we both needed a little bit of time for. I mean, we're not over it. It's not going to be. We're never going to be over it. But we just wanted there to be enough time um, to just let this breathe a little bit, let the remembrance of life and burial service happen. Um, but yeah, so that's why we kind of haven't made mention of that sooner, and so that's why again I wanted to make sure that we didn't think the transition was being callous, because I actually think I'm proud of how we've tried to be very thoughtful and meticulous, and again inclusive of so many people and financial donations and just whatever we could do to help. But we wanted to make mention of, we'll talk about the Ridge, but we wanted to talk about Pat second, because we think that actually going from talking about Pat to analyzing holes feels just wrong. But as Chris mentioned, we picked the Ridge because Pat used to work there. It was a place that was important to him, a place that was close to home. And even though maybe not my favorite golf course, a place that I would like to go back to regularly, because it's a place that will now forever remind me of Pat, in the same way that, like, Bandon was already, to use the most overused term ever, Bandon was always already kind of a religious place for me. But it's going to be more so, because to me it's like really hallowed ground of a place where I really got to spend some amazing time with Pat. And it's going to be really sad, right? Because we're going for our Bandon trip. We're going from, we did 8 last time. We're going to do 12 this time, and obviously you and Jack are going to be able to come. But it's a really I'm going to get emotional when I say it, but we're going to have an extra spot. Like, because I mean the 8 guys that came the first time, I think everybody's locked. We don't have it booked yet, but we're kind of locked and ready for 2025. But 8 guys are now 7. And that's just not something we ever expected. Like, I told my dad, it's like, it's also just a reminder to all of us to appreciate right now, right? Because in my mind, when we got on the plane back from Bandon, it was like, God, we're going to do this every year and a half, right? We're going to, like, this is probably the group I'm going to go to, like, Ireland and Scotland and Tasmania, all this shit. This is going to be our group. And suddenly, just with one phone call out of the blue, 8 became 7. And I'm not trying to say that's going to happen to other people, but it's just to remember, if there's a golf trip you want to plan, fucking go plan it. And, hopefully we can help you do it in a affordable way. Like, hopefully another whole point of this podcast is, if you want to take a golf trip and can't spend $6,000 to go to Ireland, hit us up. We'll help you plan one with your friends or your family. And, there's going to be more content about that to come. But, we really, really miss Pat. But it makes me feel a tremendous gratitude for everybody, but also for you, Big. I mean, I don't know. I love you, buddy. And, sometimes these podcasts can sometimes feel like a chore with all that we have going on, but being able to have an hour with you every other week and to play when we can and to plan the cookout, I don't take it lightly. It's really special, and I love you very much.
Same here, buddy. Love you. I mean, it's one of those things where the pod, we started this because we wanted to have time set aside to have the same conversations that we already had. And, it's been amazing being able to do this with you and get on and talk about one of our favorite hobbies that we share. And so, it's a special time, and one of our special friends no longer gets to experience a lot of that stuff with us, and it's sad time, but, he's always going to be remembered, and, we're always going to be thinking about Pat every time we step on the golf course. So, yeah, it's going to always stick with us, but hey, I love you, and, we're going to keep pushing along on this, and, we'll always remember Pat in good spirits and, who he is. So,
yeah. I guess to get us out of here real quick, I'll tell one quick story that, Pat has some that, maybe are not that we're exactly a family friendly podcast, but to leave everybody with one story, Bandon Dunes, obviously, it's a bunch of adults. We had our sheep ranch round, we got snowed out. So we shower, go to the main lodge, and, everybody would bring in their wallets, but then there's no reason to, because you put your shit on, your number, right? But everyone had brought their wallet to lunch for a reason I don't know, because I was like, I'm not going to. So we show up at the lodge, we're having lunch, and lady's like, you want beers? We're like, yes. And I think it was John, orders like the Bandon Pale, and she goes, ID? Oh my God. And so as it turns out, everyone, showed her ID except for me, and I had to be like, hey, not to be a dick, but like, could you go, my ID's on file, like I don't have it, could you, basically, can you help? And the lady walks away, because everybody at the tables, but I think Dash is the youngin at like 26, and JD, I don't know how old JD is, but I think the most senior. Sorry, JD, I'm sorry. 35, 34, 33, I don't know. We'll talk about it this weekend. But like Pat just like, she's walking away, and Pat just like has like tears in his eyes. He's laughing. It's like ribs out to break. And he leans in and he goes, what'd she think? Like a bunch of fucking like 31-year-olds brought some fucking 18-year-old in their abandoned trip? Like, couldn't she through context have understood that like you're probably about the same age? Like, what are we doing? Like a bunch of 30-year-olds bringing a fucking 17-year-old in this golf trip? And I can't tell you what it was, but everybody just like slumped over in their chairs and laughing. But that's the moment, right? We're like, and it was a way to sort of like, I'm the moron who didn't bring my ID, and they could have roasted me, but Pat just like, with that zippy one-liner that just has everybody kind of laughing into their beers. That's who Pat was. So, Big, like I said earlier, I love you. I'll talk to you soon. And I'm grateful for our time together.
Ditto, buddy. Talk to you soon. Love ya.
Okay. Peace.